Hey, Jason.
Evening. Hey, Eric.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Melinda. How you doing?
Getting there. Not sure I want to go there, but I'm getting there.
Daylight savings time, the sun's still out. Hey. Yeah, at least with all the snow, the kind of nice thing is that same day, then it's sunny and 40 and half of it melts away.
Yeah. Plus, so many people are used to working remotely. It's like, okay, I'll just work from home today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's even for the state when, they had offices and like the museum itself closed, but they send out an email saying like, well, if you've been teleworking, you still have to work. It's like, we know, thanks, no snow days.
Hmm.
Evening, Madeline.
Hello, how are you guys?
Good. Yeah, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm going to take off this weird background. I never know, or this gray background. I never know if it's on or off, actually.
Is that like a photo you took from somewhere?
Yes, it's like just an iPhone video or photo, and I still really like it. So it was in Crested Butte, though. So one of
yeah,
the most
super.
beautiful places, I think, in Colorado.
It's super.
That
It's
is
super
my
nice.
favorite place. I love Crested Butte.
I know, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, just that whole kind of stuff around there too. It's really great.
You're really in the middle of nowhere when you go.
And it looks like you're powering through, Helene.
Yeah, glad to see you could make it. Of course, you are muted.
Hey, sorry guys, I'm just joining in right now. I wasn't going to join in because I just had like a surgery last week, but I saw some of the emails and how could I miss this meeting? So here I am. Can
Good.
the camera stay off, or do I legally have to put it on, or what?
I wonder. I noticed city council doesn't always, they just have an avatar sometimes or a picture.
Okay, well, let's see if I can get away with it. And if I have to, I'll put it on and we'll have a meeting. I'm a mess.
Okay. Well, and I know Cash said he probably couldn't make it. Still expecting CJ.
Sorry guys, I was a little bit late there.
Yeah, and Lauren should be joining us as well. I did not hear anything from her.
Yeah.
We'll give it another minute and then we'll get going. So we do have
Yeah.
a quorum. So. There she is.
Oh.
Hi, Lauren.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
since we got most people, want to start, and since, like you said, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and get started.
it's gonna be a lively meeting.
Yeah, so let's come to order. We can get started with approving the minutes from the last meeting.
Give us a time for a call to order.
Oh,
please.
it is 6:35.
Thank you.
Man, should we do
and
a
then we
roll
need to do roll
call
call.
or? Here comes CJ.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yay.
I can't
All
seem to
right.
get my computer to open Outlook, and I don't know why. Okay, so I'm on.
Okay, so roll call. Chair Ellswick,
Here.
Vice Chair O'Brien.
Here.
Lauren Cooper.
You're muted.
Here.
Thank you. Cash Parker is going to be absent this evening, I believe. Matt Crabtree.
Here.
CJ Cullinan.
Here,
Helene Federici.
Here.
And Councilmember Cuesta. I hadn't heard from him, but maybe he'll pop in. But right now he's absent. For staff members, Eric Sampson is present, and Madeline Hinkfuss.
Present.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, we didn't get as far as hoped in the last meeting, but I don't see anything in the minutes that I would object to.
Yeah, I'll move to approve the minutes as is.
Yeah. I'll second it.
Okay.
Is there
All in
anyone
favor?
opposed? All right, then.
All right. I'm going to say that passes unanimously minus Cash, who is.
Yeah.
And I have to abstain because I wasn't at the last meeting.
Thank you. And
Oh, that's right.
you're so honest.
All right, and there are no members of the public present. So we can skip the public forum and move ahead to our old business. I rather thought the city attorney would be here to explain his draft of 16.611.
Eric,
so,
did you hear why he's, go ahead.
yeah, so we just found out this morning that Alex had put in his 2 weeks. So he is going to be leaving the city of Inglewood.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder
Is
if that
there
kind
any insights into when someone new might be hired? And
No, I think this was just decided earlier this week. So he made this decision earlier this week. So I am totally not sure what's going to be the next step regarding city attorney.
Sorry, Jason.
So
if I
are
could-
we allowed to go to the city with this without the lawyer's input?
To city council?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think once you make the revisions, we got pushed back on the study session calendar until March. So we've got a couple meetings to
March,
pull-
April, I should think.
Huh?
You said March, this is March.
You said
Oh, I'm
March,
sorry, you got pushed back to May.
May. Oh, okay.
Right, yeah, right now you're on tentative for May 17th, I think it is.
Okay, and a quick point to bring up here on the 16-611.
I can barely hear you, Matt. I'm sorry.
Interesting. Let's see if I can adjust my level. Stand by. Is that any better?
I guess, yeah.
Is that
Slightly.
better? Okay, sorry about that. All right, so yeah, 16-611. So it's interesting that so the city attorney right now city attorney is an acting city attorney. Is that right? And there is no assistant city attorney. Eric?
Dugan Comer is an assistant city attorney, but I'm not sure what his role is going to be as of right now regarding everything that's been going on.
The reason why I ask is it seems that a lot of work was done on 16.611 here, and specifically critiquing of the work that we put in. It's interesting that was done, and then now the city attorney is leaving. It would be interesting to, and maybe this is something we don't know, but if Dugan will be stepping in, if he's been brought up to speed or had any input on this.
That I don't know. Again, this is all very, very new, and we kind of don't know what the next steps are for us on our end. So hopefully we'll be able to figure that out in the next couple of weeks here, and at least keep things moving forward.
Yeah, interesting. And then another point to this is was there any context with the meeting that Jason had with the city attorney as to why some of these particular items were stricken from the draft here?
Yes, certainly. So we had a call, video call. I'd have to check the actual date. A couple weeks ago, myself and Alex. David Cuesta was on there briefly, but then he had to leave for city council stuff coming into his office. So I would note that these revisions don't reflect any kind of, he asked some questions about things like districts and review of landmarks and things like that. And these do not reflect any of the kind of comments I made, and it doesn't seem like took any of the input that I had on explaining what these actually mean as far as in the world of preservation and what the commission does. So yeah, I think he had, despite explaining some of the things, like he was really concerned about properties being listed over owner objection, and you could see he deleted pretty much all of that, which was I explained to him that those sorts of things like commission members.
We're losing you a little bit there, Jason. I think CJ, you're on twice on here, and I think we're losing audio from Jason. Let's do the feedback.
Oh, here
Go
comes
ahead right now, Jason.
Okay. Does it sound a little better?
That's better.
Okay. Yeah, so he had kind of concerns about things, listing things over owner objections, which, something we've kind of discussed, but I explained to him some of the nuances of that, and he didn't, again, with basically totally deleting C2B, doesn't really recognize what that actually is. Again, commission members preparing nominations, other members of the public, that's with, that's like what Lauren's doing with the case study of the Scarrett House, where she's preparing it on behalf of the property owner and going forward. And I explained to him that that's what it was. So I was really surprised to see that, deleted pretty much wholesale. And other things, kind of along those lines of his concerns of things being listed over owner objections, that's why he deleted districts throughout. Again, I kind of explained what districts were, that they're, recognized historic property type, and that, they're, a tool for preservation. But again, he went through and, he eliminated all those throughout. And, I was kind of hoping, again, obviously he's leaving, so he's not here, but I kind of wanted to go over some stuff with him, because he talked about concerns with takings, but his revisions here and comments don't really reflect takings law in preservation. It's well established, and that's something I wanted to go through with him, was takings law and historic preservation. So I guess he returned these to me, and I forwarded them to Eric, and I did note to him when he gave me the revisions that I was substantially concerned, because I totally understand if that the code revisions, you know, they may not look exactly as we want, but this really kind of left us with, you know, kind of nothing, including review, you know, kind of aspects of review of the landmark nominations and things like that. So I think maybe it's, I don't know the exact way to move forward with a, you know, different city attorney coming in, but perhaps that's the opportunity, because I was kind of hoping for somebody who would help us get there, you know, rather than just kind of, again, it's probably like half of the revisions are kind of gone without really recognizing how any of these things work or the legal aspects of them. So I was,
Well, thank you, Jason. So sorry. It almost seems like you had to invest some time in bouncing your head against a wall. So, you know, I'm sorry. And what's worse is another lawyer comes in, you're going to have to do it again.
yeah,
You
that's
willing?
okay. That's okay. You know, opportunity to perhaps go over this with someone else will be more receptive is not necessarily you know, a bad thing. So I'm certainly willing to do that again.
Could we just lose this since the lawyer's leaving?
That's my question. Do we have to accept these changes?
No, I would say let us move to reject that version. And when there's another lawyer to talk to, we'll submit our original changes again and explain it to him.
Now, the issue might be, we might have a study session before the lawyer is in place. So now the idea is, what would we do? I suggest that we pose the changes that we posed with the idea that, you know, the lawyer had come back and now the lawyer left, and we weren't able to discuss some of the changes he suggested. So we wanted to start fresh with a new lawyer, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. What do you guys think?
That's a nice way of putting it. I don't know about Mr. O'Brien, but I've got my Irish up over the whole thing.
But I think we could have a pretty fair argument in doing something along those lines by, you know, if we could quantify this with other communities and what other communities have passed and done, because much of this language in here, it wasn't that he necessarily changed the language, he just struck some of the language. So if we could, you know, say that, hey, this is pretty typical for other communities and other areas, and then specifically these are the reasons why these need to be in here, or the reasons why we decided to put them in here, that may help our argument in going to council ahead of this, and not wholesale accepting his recommendations.
We
Yeah,
could write a white paper, as it were, explaining the thing as sort of a introduction to whatever attorney ends up taking a look at it, I think. I would also want to put into the record that what 215 in the city ordinances is what established our commission, and 215.5A, well, 215.5 is the powers and duties of the commission. And it says, all right, promote and encourage voluntary participation in designating, preserving, protecting, enhancing, and perpetuating those structures, sites, and districts which reflect on and so forth. And further promote and encourage the use of outstanding historical or architectural structural sites and districts for the education and welfare of the people of the city. So they'd have to change a different ordinance as well if they really want to rip districts out of 16.611. So,
Right.
Eric, are we allowed to throw this away? Seriously.
Honestly, I'm not sure, So I think since the study session got pushed back to May, we've got some time to figure this out, considering that there's going to be a potential, well, there will be some sort of change in city attorney at some point, but just moving forward with what we have and what options there are, we need to take a look at that.
So I move that we, go ahead.
I just
Go
have
ahead.
a question. I mean, can we present our original, document to council without it going through a city attorney first? With letting them know that the city attorney hasn't seen this yet, but this is what we're proposing?
I think that would be okay, just to present them with the language that you as an HPC would like to see. And then if you frame it as we're coming to you, city council, for your input on our proposed language, and and then begin this discussion there about what changes they would like to see and how restrictive that they would like to see the language. Because ultimately, the ultimate goal of the study sessions are going to be to get kind of council on board with the HPC language for the Title 16 rewrite. Which is heading down the pipeline a little bit later this year. So yeah, that's the ultimate goal, is kind of get on the same page as council and try to come up with some sort of language that all parties can agree upon.
Of course, my concern on this would be to, if this has become record, we do need to address, I think, the fact that this version exists. We really, I mean, while we can reject it, I think we need to reject it, on grounds. But what I'm concerned about is, yes, we can bring the original back to council, but this still exists.
Could the grounds be that the city attorney left before we got a chance to discuss the changes with him?
I think that is a perfectly acceptable, state. Unilaterally, he made a decision and then was unavailable to substantiate his decision. So that kind of makes a collaboration with this and a compromise difficult. I'd also mention too, as another interesting point to what Melinda mentioned with districts, is there, while the purpose of the historic overlay, which I believe is what it's actually called, Eric, you can correct me on this, but there is a historic overlay on Grant Street. And while that was not done under the auspice of historic preservation, that was done under the auspice of preventing certain types of construction in that area.
That was the neighborhood protection overlay, I think you're referring to.
Yes, neighborhood protection, but that could be considered a district, and then the manner in which that was passed was more unilateral from council by way of recommendations from a few people in that area. One could argue that would be under the language that the attorney came up with, that could be a takings as is, but there's already a situation that occurred there. So if you use that as an example, as a district, and it really hasn't caused a whole lot of problems in that area, as far as I understand, and most people in that area probably still supportive of it after all these years. I don't know. Maybe I'm contextualizing that, but you get my point there, Eric, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just want to concur with that, Matt. I think that's an excellent idea and an excellent example, because that's kind of already a demonstration on the books of the city regulating private property for the benefit of the community overall. And that ties into, again, the precedents with takings and stuff like that are well established all the way up to the Supreme Court for decades. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a very good example in Inglewood right now to show that there's that precedent. It's also, like I said, not really been an issue and stuff. So I'm glad you noted that, because I think that's a really good corollary.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be a little cautious going down that path, because the way that it was passed initially was very much unilateral from city council, but which I don't know, I guess probably cautiously do that. Full disclosure, at the time I was somewhat against that idea, but just in the way that the city council had handled that. But it is an example of a district per se that could be used. You know, it can be used as an example. To your point, Jason.
Yeah, totally. And also, yeah, you have a good point with kind of, in some way, kind of quantifying things, you know, because there's like 141, 142 historic preservation commissions in the state. And I'm not aware of any who can't designate districts. You know, there's some who do things kind of differently, like Colorado Springs. They don't do districts necessarily, but they do those overlays. They're kind of the same thing. And then as far as things like, I don't know the numbers on how many have mandatory design review, like our demolition review and stuff for those landmark properties, but it's a very sizable percentage of them. And, you know, across all kinds of communities from, you know, Brighton to Fort Collins to Little Lake City, you know, has mandatory design review up there. So yeah, I think those are all tools we can.
And I'd also probably add to that with a little bit of context is, you know, our intent is not to perform a government takings. Our intent is not to dictate necessarily or restrict heavily, but to protect, you know, character and community, and especially with what's going on in the city right now. So those are the things that probably the points that maybe we should highlight with that is, if anything, that example that city council did back, you know, in early 2010s, I guess, I don't know exactly when that passed with that overlay, but that was probably more of an example of a government taking than anything that we would ever do. So.
Agreed, yeah. So your recommendation, Eric, is perhaps, you know, is there any kind of action now you think, or is it more just, do you need to feel that there's time to hash out how we can present this or what materials go to, you know, council and stuff. So, you know, I think both Matt and Lauren brought up good points that, you know, this is something that, you know, we didn't really have the opportunity to explain or get insight on why these decisions were made. And so it just kind of, the things were just kind of hashed out, and now we're kind of left, you know, kind of hanging again. So yeah, just kind of best way forward.
Yeah. And yeah, I think if you kind of frame it in that context, as Matt and Lauren was talking about, regarding the districts and what's done in other communities, I think that's a good way to start the conversation with council for the study session. But hopefully by the time we meet in April, I'll have some more insight onto what you want to present and what you want to talk about regarding the language and how maybe how to approach it as well.
All right. So we are agreed we're going to just ignore this draft, or should we vote to say we don't accept?
I think there should be some sort of kind of written response as to why some of these changes are being rejected, and your rationale as to why do you feel that this HPC should have that ability to make those kind of districts decisions.
I'll say that if we motion right now, and I was about ready to move to this, but if we motion right now, that will create an official kind of position on the record for the minutes that can go forward with this. So I move that we, how should I say this? I move that we contest the results from the city attorney on the landmark protections language for 16-6-11.
Is there a second? Is there, for discussion though, is there a way to state that as just return to the legal department for review and discussion with Jason O'Brien?
I mean, we can amend the motion to include that.
What do you guys think? I mean,
Is Jason willing to go through this again?
he said he is.
Yeah, I can do that. And then, same thing, it's as far as, kind of preparing some language too for, where kind of our issues are, I can do that kind of stuff. And
Okay.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
So how do you guys want to word it? Should we word it the way Matt already has it on the board, or should we just say return for further discussion between Jason and legal department?
I like the latter.
Okay,
Oh, all right. Well,
I'll
then,
rescind my second.
and I'll amend my motion to state that, well, how did you put that, CJ?
I know, really. How did I say that? To return. What? How did I say it? Return the submitted. I forget. I was so
The
smart.
draft,
It fell
the
right out.
draft.
Okay.
How
The
about
city
this?
attorney draft.
I so move that we return the draft that was
From-
prepared by the city.
Turn the Title 16 draft.
Yeah, the Title 16-611 draft back to the city attorney's office for further review.
With.
How about this? How about I rescind my motion? I'll let you move, CJ. I'm trying to paraphrase what you're saying.
You were doing good. I was just adding with Jason O'Brien.
All right, so I'll rescind my motion. CJ, go ahead and move.
Oh, shoot. What did he say? Did you get it, Eric?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like return Title 16-611 draft to city attorney for further review.
With Jason O'Brien. Interaction. What's that word?
With Vice Chair O'Brien as point of
Further
contact.
discussion. That's what it was. Discussion.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So move. How about you, Matt? You want to second it?
I second.
Sorry, buddy. Thank you.
All in favor?
I,
You say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Helene, did you say aye?
Yeah, and Helene's saying aye.
Okay.
Okay.
So is that unanimous?
Unanimous.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. On to the next item. I can put away my Irish language for a while.
Oh, not
I
yet.
might need it,
Not
yeah.
yet.
But,
Start mapping and designations, which was an interesting problem in itself here. But
I was all ready to illustrate the meaning of Donnybrook, but didn't need to. Okay. The historic, you've all seen some emails with Sean Lewis and with Madeline on the neighborhood maps. And I noticed that the Englewood Citizen just had a thing right at the beginning about historic neighborhood names. And although I did go and look at the map, and I guess it's a starter, but it doesn't quite match what we had, I think. However, I can see there is a concern that some of the neighborhoods are too big to be properly organized. And certainly that's, I think, have I frozen that? No.
oh, you're good.
Is everyone else frozen? No, we're not frozen. Okay. And certainly we can, I mean, just from our historic research, we can break a lot of them up. I counted like Bates Logan can be broken into 4 different pieces. And Matt and I would like to see Strayer's Broadway Heights as a separate district, right?
Absolutely. And if I could jump in here a little bit too, Melinda, if that's okay. I had a really brief conversation with Sean on this, as I think you did too, right, Melinda? You had a conversation with Sean also?
Whoa, where'd Madeline go? Oh, there she is. Hi.
Hi, Madeline. Muted.
Hello.
Melinda, did you end up having a conversation with Sean on this?
Just an email conversation. And then I recently got another reply from him that he did understand why we thought historic maps and neighborhood maps were 2 different projects.
Okay,
I think he's
so,
disappointed about that.
Sure, and I think if I can paraphrase kind of what I understand the request to be from the city manager on this, and obviously up for discussion, is what was raised was a thought of dividing, and Madeline, you can jump in here too, because I think you probably had some direction on this too from Sean, but he more or less directing this to be in a smaller group, smaller areas, 300 to 400 households, and per subdivision or area. And then secondary to that, going more back to, which I think in many ways is good, going more back to a historic naming of what each area should be. Of course, Colleen and I had a conversation on this briefly, and I think there's certainly a concern and a problem that some of the historic neighborhoods may not fit within the 300 to 400. So we need to figure out how that will work. Yeah, I think as an overall summary of this, 300 to 400 households is what Sean has been requesting for an area per subdivision. And then second to that, less park names, more historic neighborhood names. Madeline, is that a good paraphrasing of this?
I think that's a great paraphrasing. After we sat down and looked at the map and I got some feedback from neighborhood group leaders, they definitely liked the idea of having neighborhoods with homes around like 300 to 400 homes. Some of the neighborhoods on the map are around 900 homes. And that's my fault. I didn't even look into that. We're learning as we go. And then Melinda said that these are kind of 2 separate projects. So we want to break them up even further using the history and then continue and get more feedback from the residents for the permanent neighborhood map for Englewood.
Well,
By permanent, it would change, right? I mean, your neighborhoods could technically change, right?
That is correct. It could change.
Now, actually, real fast here, Madeline. The map that's sent out here, North Englewood, what is it? North Englewood, South Englewood. It seems to be broken up into smaller fragments now. How was that done? What was the?
Yes. So I reached out to GIS and just asked about that map because I wanted to see the way that you could break them out, because if you click on all of the subdivisions, the names come up. But the GIS program that we had, the colors we only had 200 shades of colors. And so there was about 300 plus subdivisions. So we broke them up into north subdivisions and south subdivisions. So each subdivision has a different color, but we cannot get that all in one map if you want to see them broken down into colors, if that makes sense.
And north and south divided by Hamden?
Honestly, I'm not sure. But
it looks like Mansfield is the dividing line.
is it Mansfield?
I
They
would
probably
think.
divided it as evenly as possible.
Mansfield's pretty far south. Oh, well, I guess not.
Sure. Now, one more question on this too, Madeline. The naming, where did the naming come from? Is this existing subdivisions as recorded by Arapahoe County and according to history in the city, or is this kind of random names?
So the Inglewood GIS maps, that the north and south ones.
Mhm.
Yeah. So according to GIS, those are accurate records of the city. I do not know specifically where they have come from. I can ask them that. But I specifically asked if those were historic and they said, yes, they are accurate. So I can clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah, we would like to really know what the reference is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that we took such care in doing was annotating the history from the historical maps. The map that we've worked on, that CJ and I have worked on, is now, like, the research we did just belongs to that map and is somewhat irrelevant now because that map is irrelevant. So I have like my own, like, I guess I'm a little baffled at why the city wants to break Inglewood up into 300 home chunks, sort of arbitrarily kind of drawing these neighborhoods. Like, what is the actual mission to do this? And why? And I also want to add that I've heard now from a couple longtime residents. One of them got their hands on this new map and sent it out to some other long-term residents, and the feedback is not good. People are looking at them. I don't know what map they were looking at. I was just told this, but they're looking at the map and they're like, this is not Inglewood. Like, these are not the neighborhoods. These are not the names. I don't recognize it. And so they're not particularly happy. I know that when we first set out and we met as a subgroup, Madeline, one of the things that was discussed was that the map that we created with the hopes of kind of being modern, but also respecting the neighborhoods that exist, would at some point be open to public discourse through city council. It doesn't seem like that's a plan here. Like, are the residents of Inglewood going to get to have a say in how their new neighborhoods look, other than just the ones that you speak to? Is the city at large going to be invited to give feedback at like city council? Or is there going to be any request for buy-in? I suspect a lot of people are not going to like to look at a new map of Inglewood that doesn't represent the maps what they have known for decades.
Yes, of course. We are going to bring this to a citywide community engagement effort. And after talking to Melinda and Sean through email, and last meeting, we discussed how we thought the map that HPC had put together is just a really awesome springboard and a great starting point for bringing the neighborhood idea of drawing some lines and boundaries to the community. And then we're going to we want to hear their feedback and where they think their boundaries are. And we will definitely, the plan is to preserve the history and tell them how we got here, and show them where all of the subdivisions are on the map and things like that.
So how are you going to do that? Because CJ and I already did that once. It was many hours of work. So now what's your plan to do it?
I don't have a specific plan lined or outlined, but I will say that through emails with Sean and Melinda also outlined how these are two separate projects, how there's the history project and how there's the neighborhood project. So the neighborhood project is moving forward with a community engagement effort. And we are asking HPC if you would like to be involved in breaking down the neighborhoods even further to get them around 300, 400 homes so we can still honor the history and the historic subdivisions moving forward.
What's interesting is that we did discuss that it's two separate projects, but when you characterize the projects, it almost feels like we're still not on the same page.
Still
From my
trying to-
understanding, I'm sorry, what?
Or we were still trying to meld them, it sounds like.
Okay. From my understanding, the two separate projects is that the HPC project is a neighborhoods project, and the city's project is like a community groups, people-based project. So I know we went over this again and again and again last meeting. And to be honest, like you did like not in agreement, but then like when you would say it, you would revert back to the other language. So I'm curious, Melinda, when you say it's two separate projects, my understanding is our project is a geographical neighborhoods project, not just history, because not all of the neighborhoods have the same historical significance as others, but it's geographical. And then the city's project is more like community organizing. That's my understanding of the distinction. But when I hear Madeline describe it, her project is geographical and ours is just history. And it's really not about neighborhoods at all. It's just a history project.
I think not entirely. I mean, I see them as ours is looking to the past because we're the historic people, and hers is looking to the future of Inglewood, if you will.
So if Madeline decides to rename Broadway Heights, break it up and name it all kinds of stuff, and now it's all this different stuff that it's never been before, how does that actually preserve history? Because Broadway Heights is very large. It's more than 300 homes. Broadway Heights is going to get broken up into a dozen different neighborhoods. The residents of Broadway Heights who once lived in Broadway Heights will now live in some other neighborhood. We don't know yet. It hasn't been decided. And so I'm just wondering, I'm just curious as to like, does that honor the history of Broadway Heights? Is that what the residents of Broadway Heights want? Real estate agents advertise these neighborhoods. You know, there's already a system in place, like there's already neighborhoods. The idea of breaking them up into 300 home chunks seems very arbitrary, very high level, not very organic. And I'm curious about the kind of unforeseen fallout from it. When I've asked you about your methods for preserving the history, you haven't thought that through. There's in fact, a lot of questions asked, Madeline, seems like you haven't thought through. And I'm wondering too, I did ask what the ultimate objective here, if the ultimate objective is to create community, a sense of community among the people, why isn't that the city's focus for this project? Why isn't it not a community organizing focus with neighborhood networks? Why does it have to be a project that takes Broadway Heights and turns it into 12 different neighborhoods?
I think that's a conversation you might need to have with the city manager, because that's his idea to break it up into the 300 home districts.
Let me kind of take this just really fast, if you don't mind. I mean, I guess the question is at this point then, how flexible is the 300, 400, Madeline?
It's definitely flexible where there are like apartment buildings. When I draw that out, that's going to count, as 100 residences. And so we have to figure out where the apartment buildings are, where the nursing homes are. We can definitely make that larger. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's more when I've talked to neighborhood group leaders, they, want to be able to walk in their neighborhood, and it just, they want it to be just a manageable size for them. So it's definitely flexible.
Can they not walk in their neighborhoods now? Just out of curiosity, like, is this a real problem?
I am just taking the feedback from the neighborhood group leaders that I am in conversation with, and I'm just trying to, we are definitely organizing community, and the next step and something that we're going to see, or that we want to see, is also drawing the boundaries and the lines for the neighborhoods as we move forward. That's part of the plan.
Okay, I have one more question and then I'll stop on it. Lauren, your specialty is historic preservation. And I'm just curious about your opinion about coming into a city like Inglewood that has such a rich history and arbitrarily deciding that now the neighborhoods need to be roughly 300. There's flexibility. You could have 350, but they have to be chopped up. That, no offense, Madeline, but you don't live in Inglewood and you're pretty new, that Madeline's going to be overseeing this. And I'm wondering, from a historical preservation perspective, if it makes sense to preserve the history of a city by approaching a community project this way, in your opinion.
I can't speak from experience because I've never really had an issue like this come up. I mean, I'll say that when you draw the boundary of a historic district, it's not necessarily along neighborhood lines. It can be based on anything. A lot of times it's based on the architecture or the development of a neighborhood versus like specific neighborhood boundaries. So doesn't necessarily have to be that like correlation between the two for a historic district to be the boundary of a historic neighborhood. But at the same time, like, I think we need to be clear about where, if this is our goal, we need to be clear that these are the boundaries of historic neighborhoods, and that might be different than the current, neighborhood associations or whatever that are coming out of Madeline's project. I think we just need to be clear on the distinction between the two.
Okay, so then I agree with you. I think that Madeline's project is a neighborhood associations project, but Madeline's pretty insistent that her project is a neighborhoods project, like a boundary geographical neighborhood project. So I'm not sure where this will go next, but I think I've voiced my concerns enough. So thank you all for listening.
Real fast here, I'll jump in as a point of order. Looks like the largest subdivision, historic subdivision in our community is Broadway, South Broadway Heights. South Broadway Heights goes from Mansfield to Union, from Broadway to Clarkson. By an estimate of approximately 24 households per block, that area includes 1,500 and change homes. So that's a pretty large area. That's going to be the biggest challenge, I think, meeting the requirements.
I will say, we want your help. That's why Sean has been going back and forth with Melinda, and I know that Matt and him had a conversation. We want to preserve the history. We're trying to make a modern day map, and we're also trying to preserve the history all at the same time. And I know that we can meet in the middle somewhere on that. And we want to work together in order to make this happen. So it doesn't have to be specifically 300 neighborhoods, and that might not, like preserve history perfectly. But I do think that there is some way that we can work together to get this done in a really great way and move forward with the Inglewood neighborhood project.
I'm sure there is, and I mean, this is something that was originally brought up at our very first meeting. Even before Sean actually was city manager here, this was brought up, and it was very reassuring to know that Sean was kind of had the same idea when he came on board to do this, because I think this is really important for any community, and it's very much missing from our community. I would be concerned about having two different names for an area, but I think we can potentially maybe work through that, but I don't want this to get confusing. Another thing that's interesting about Inglewood that might be a little bit different from other communities when it comes to subdivisions like this is the way that Inglewood grew was more or less organic from its conception. Things occurred on their own. These subdivisions were not arbitrary names that were picked at later points in time in history, but these were actually picked as the areas were developed. And in some areas, to Colleen's point, some areas people are very strong about how their neighborhoods are called or what the subdivision is. Some real estate agents in Inglewood even refer to it as certain areas. If you're in the Trailend area, or if you're in the Broadway Heights area, those are obviously CJ's area, very much associated with Arapahoe Acres, and that certain things, I think have to stay the same. So this is going to be an interesting endeavor to move forward on, but I would hope that, and Madeline, I'll tell you, my initial idea, way back at the the original inception of kind of discussing this, was to hopefully have someday road signs. So you have, for instance, Sherman and Bates. That's the block that I live on. And below that, welcome to Broadway Strayers Heights.
Just like Denver has.
Yeah.
That's just a great idea. I think that's a
Yeah, but
great way
it's
to preserve the
historic.
history too. And would you call that a historic district, Matt, then? Like Broadway Strayers Heights?
Mhm.
And then
I
you
mean-
live in the Bates, did you say Bates? I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Bates and Sherman. Yeah, Sherman.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
And Lincoln and Cornell, I'm still in the same district.
That would
At
be,
least that's what it says on my title, Strayers Broadway Heights. But I think we can help with this because we've done a lot of the research with the Sanborn maps and so forth that says what the original development name of that was. So that's like what is labeled as Bates Logan is actually 4 different developments. And that's just one example. What I looked up. I looked at Idlewild, and that's like 5 different developments.
That's the thing that's hard too, is that has the city started booming in the 50s? I mean, booming. Obviously, we've got subdivisions, but you can ask Helena too, the idea that we saw 3 or 4 names in 3 or 4 different parts of the city because that developer found some land here or found some land there. And so it got like to where it was 1 or 2 houses here. Or, remember when Mike Jones and I started this, we just got so wrapped up. And that's what was so cool to have Helena's guidance, was to make it more bigger focus. But again, history is history. Like Signal Hill only has 12 houses, right, Helene?
Yeah, it's mostly commercial.
But
And then
that
I think
one little-
apartments.
Yeah, next to the apartments are
Mhm.
these 12 houses. And
Yeah.
so it's like, is that considered a neighborhood? Well, they consider themselves a neighborhood because they're these 12 houses that talk to each other and probably are concerned of traffic and concerned of, you know what I mean? Certain things that are specific to them. But we can't always point to a space like that. Like Centennial, it was so cool. I drove by there and I was like, oh, now I understand why that's a neighborhood and a development, because it is. But there's a lot of, like, where the Carnation farms were, a lot of those places seem to have piecemeal houses and piecemeal developers. I
oh,
wish they all said Sears or Penny's, catalog, but they don't.
I was just going to have kind of a point of order as we're kind of using language, people have been kind of using districts as words for these neighborhoods. And I think we want to avoid that because that's a specific historic property type, as we're talking about, like with the code revision. So a neighborhood is not, you could have a neighborhood that's a district like Arapahoe Acres or something, but they're in historic preservation, they're not corollary. So just to, there seems to be some other confusion going on, but to make sure, we all know what you guys mean, but just kind of, if there's things going forward, to be sure we're clear on that.
I appreciate that, Jason, because that's actually one of the issues too. When we put the map together, in order to delineate the historic districts, we also had to encapsulate non-historic areas too. So I've kind of shied away from the distinction between the 2 projects, being that ours is strictly historical. I see, like, again, that's why I keep deferring to ours being like geographical and the cities being more community-based, because not everything in Inglewood is historic, but we did draw all the lines so that we had buckets to put all the history. So our map is only partially historically significant, but the lines had to be drawn for the sake of collecting the history within them. Does that make sense? Okay, sometimes I wonder if any of this makes sense. But I also want to just say, I love that Madeline is excited about hanging street signs, but if the neighborhoods are subject to change and there's this flux factor in your project, I want to just point out again, this is not Helene's rules. This is the rules of logic, because it costs money to hang signs. So if your project has this fluidity, there can't be signs. So I love that you love that idea, but you have to at some point recognize the contradictions within your own objectives. It concerns me when I ask you about like how you plan to proceed with things, or like, and it seems contradictory, like there's a little bit of an issue with logic going on in how you're approaching the city side of the project in general. So I just also want to throw that out there.
Well, I would kind of say that I would hope that the street signs would be a goal at some point to have this and have defined areas.
And actually, we could use the word area, for a district that isn't designated.
If we have ebb and flow of names and areas, I think that kind of removes the possibility of a defined region and those in the know. I don't know. I kind of think back to, I moved to Inglewood in 2004, and block parties were a really big deal in the city at that point in time. In fact, historically, the Historic Preservation Commission, I agree with history here. At one point, Inglewood had the most block parties on National Night Out than any other city in the state of Colorado. In fact, to the point that the governor even landed his helicopter at Inglewood High School and congratulated the city for that. And there's a neighborhood aspect that has, honestly, probably for many reasons, both from the development perspective of what's happening in the city right now, and then potentially, a differing opinion of how neighborhood works in our city, that has somehow evaporated over the last almost 20 years. CJ, you're muted.
Sorry, Nancy retired. She was the one that got us that credence, and her retirement brought in someone else that, again, wasn't from our area and didn't go about it the same huggy, touchy way that Nancy had. It's just a different personality.
So I think, I respect what's attempting to be accomplished here by regaining that. So I don't know how that necessarily translates, but I think there's an importance here of defining areas, and in many cases what people already associate with their area, and then kind of work separate on that. Madeline, what do you think?
I think that sounds great. We're using area instead of district. Is that correct?
Yeah, don't use the word district.
I know I'm not using the word district, but I just want to clarify, I guess.
I think there's an important separation that it needs to
Yeah,
occur.
but it would be like Broadway, Strayers Heights area or neighborhood?
No.
Development.
I think neighborhood.
Development.
Development or neighborhood. I don't know. Helene, I saw you. What were you going to say?
Eric made a really good point that Sean, this is his project, and it would be awesome if he joined one of our meetings and heard us out, since we have questions that we're not really getting too many answers on, and maybe that could help us at least distinguish the two projects, settle that discussion. If he could attend one of our meetings, what are the chances of that happening? How can we have him come join us for this discussion?
Well, how normal that is, but that's a good idea.
I mean, if he's the one if he's the one doing it ultimately, if he's the one who's going to be drawing the lines around 300 houses here and 300 houses there, and we're the Historic Preservation Commission, and a wise woman, Melinda, opened our meeting with the mission of the commission, and it applies to this as well as the previous topic. If our mission is to preserve history, I think we really need to be careful about this what I think is an odd project, a top-down kind of approach to reorganizing our city. If Sean is doing it unilaterally, I would like for him to join us to at least get our input and hear our concerns.
That's something Madeline and I can speak with Sean about. Maybe we can get him into April's meeting.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds really good. I think we can't get anywhere without him, to be honest, because I'm still pushing for the city's project to reframe itself as a community project. That's my ultimate solution to the issue, is that we maintain the geography and the city works with the people and organizes the community. But we haven't gotten there. Maybe with Sean we can, and maybe not, and I have to give up. That's the only other option at some point.
Well, I'll jump in and say that, I mean, I'd love to have Sean, join one of our meetings, because we obviously have a lot of passion here that I think he would, and him having the historic background that he does and the support of history, I think he would very much respect our passion here on this. I would say, though, that maybe we work towards something to provide initially, and that way we can have something, because it's hard to look at this map right now, Madeline, and say, and actually count out what households are, because I think we have to average. And looking at this, approximately 17 blocks, I think, would be the top end of what Eric's estimates are. Madeline, do you think that's a valid estimate?
17 blocks is one way?
17 blocks in any direction, just simply 17 blocks.
Like a square.
Right. Maybe, honestly, just trying to think of like Cushing. I don't know if there's 17, but yeah, we can use that as an average, and we can get some, I can draw the lines wherever, and then it just brings up how many residences are.
And to kind of show my work on that, that was an estimate of one block being 24 households, being 12 houses per side of the street.
That would make sense.
And I think that's, I mean, sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. Eric, you're you're in community development, so you may know this answer better than I do. Is that a pretty solid estimate?
The old school, yeah, it depends on where you're at in the city, but the old school subdivisions had about 25 lots per block. Give or take, give or take here and there. And obviously, within the block, some of those lots have been combined, and some of them are still larger lots. So it really depends on the block, but that would be, I think, a decent average to assume.
So swagging it at 24 would be.
But I'm going to go ahead and bring up something. In Arapahoe Acres, we have 124 houses. That is more than enough for me to do a newsletter, to do garage sale, to do food trucks, whatever. But the gist is there's a social dynamic, and 300 is almost, to me, like a third project. Because I would think that 300 is almost too big for your community groups, Madeline. It definitely doesn't follow any historic lines that we have. So it almost comes across as a third project.
It may be, like in the emails, Melinda said that these are two separate projects and now we're just going in circles. But if a neighborhood would like to have just 100 homes like Arapahoe Acres, then they can, have 100 homes in that area.
Because I'm thinking a block party had 12. Maybe
honestly, the block parties that I've attended are just one block. There's 25 houses.
Exactly.
It's not,
and that's where your sense of community comes from, is that
exactly. It's not always a full neighborhood. Or not 300, 500.
Right.
Like that.
And so I just find that, interesting that he came up with the 300 thing. I mean, I have to be honest, I have to go look up at Longmont. I am clueless how they up there.
Well,
no,
that's
really, I'm clueless.
So.
And to kind of back into that,
pointing out the arbitrariness of it. Like CJ, you're just pointing out, like, in my opinion, what I see is just like this weird arbitrary sort of thing that I think is going to have repercussions that can't be foreseen.
Well, and well, yeah, I mean, what yeah, I mean, honestly, my concern on this is we need what we come up with. This is a very important decision, right? What we come up with, you can't really change once you release it to the community. I guess that's what my concern is with this, is you can't one year or, you know, for 3 or 4 years call it one area and then suddenly change it to something else into something, you know, a different name. So what we come up with is somewhat it has to be well thought through. It has to be well aligned, I think, with both from the community aspect and from you know, the real aspect of what it is now and something to go off of, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But backing into the question that CJ had raised with the 300 to 400, what is the justification of that, I guess, from your conversations?
So the neighborhood resources program is just over a year old. And so some of the neighborhood group leaders that I have been speaking to, and some of the two of the registered neighbors are right around 300. And they feel like that is the perfect amount of homes. And even sometimes it's could be too large. So that's kind of where how we kind of figured that out, and looking at other cities and neighborhoods like that also. So,
and then to define neighborhood leader, you're just talking about somebody who you're in contact with, who's dubbed themselves a leader of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right. It's a community organization, grassroots volunteer project. This is not, you know, a paid position. These are people who just want to get involved in their community. They want to meet their neighbors. They want to know their neighbors. They want to make Englewood home, have a sense of belonging, feel safe.
And like if people, like if everybody on the same block wants to be the leader of that neighborhood, you know.
Right.
Everybody's
I want as many people to get involved as
everyone's a leader. Everybody's a leader, a neighborhood leader. As long as they reach out to you in your office, they're a neighborhood leader.
So I'm feeling attacked. So I'm going to call a point of order, I guess, on myself. Please. It is a grassroots organizing. You know, we just want to build community in Englewood. I'm not trying to destroy any history through this.
Okay, well, I'm sorry you feel attacked. I'm just trying to understand like the methods, the logic, the approach, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to understand some of that stuff of the project. It's a big project. And I don't get much of that out of the project. Like, how are you? And the other thing that Matt said makes a lot of sense. You do have like you would think, Matt, that when we do this map, or if the map gets done or whatever happens with the map, that it would be lasting. But don't forget that Madeline's already shared with us that the map is not fixed, it's fluid. So it does change you can change year to year. And we've even clarified that point again in this meeting. And sometimes it's hard to keep that in mind because it goes against, it's kind of counterintuitive. So whatever map we work out is always subject to change and fluidity. So there's just all these issues.
No, I mean, history does not change. And what we will work out is the history of, and then other boundaries around the thing, but what was historically a given area will remain that historically given area. Now, you can see in the map right now.
Sometimes there's layering and stuff, so, but go ahead.
What, CJ? I'm sorry?
Sometimes there's layering, you know, like we're an area we called Cinderella City. Well, it wasn't Cinderella City, it was the Tuileries. Well, before the Tuileries, it was really just a drainage ditch. So then the idea, you know, so history isn't fixed, but I'd love to hear from Jason. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say I'd request that we have the next steps as we invite Sean, because we spent over an hour on this topic in the previous meeting, and we're now over 40 minutes on this time and kind of going over the same grounds. That's not really moving anything. So I would request that we take the next move is we ask Sean to attend and we table further discussion until he's here.
Is
I
it
second
possible for
that.
Sean to hear this discussion of last week's and this week's, or is he?
Well, I'm sure
that's
he will hear it.
Time to invest.
I'm sorry, CJ, I talked over you. I'm sure he will hear it because this will be available as part of the video and audio of this will be available too.
Yep, it's all recorded.
Yeah,
But I don't know if he takes the time to listen to all of them. I mean, that would be, wow.
I would recommend to make it official if someone would take it upon themselves to write an email to reach out to Sean directly and invite him to the next HPC meeting.
Melinda, press time.
I will do that.
And just kind of, if you would basically give a brief Cliff Note summary of why we want him to attend and why kind of the topic at hand and what we want to kind of the issues that we want to iron out. Or
I would definitely use some words like definition, delineation. I don't know, stuff like that.
I like that. Yeah. I'd like to know what the plan is for the community feedback, because our plan was to have it open at city council. So I'd be curious what the city's plan is to advertise that this is happening and get the community, like the larger community's feedback in a public forum.
Yeah, I think that is actually a valid point throughout all this, is that you know, possibly the input citizen or some sort of, I'd say, community meeting, but that's a little tricky now. But some sort of open forum of you know, how and what's happening with this, because I would definitely support that in concern that this is a pretty big change for the people of this community. So having that open forum might be a good idea, I guess. CJ, what do you think? I see you kind of looking.
I mean, just like Jason brought up, we've talked 2 hours on this and we're only 8 people. It's like, shoot, when you get 200 people, it's like, I'm sorry. A democracy can be very messy.
Very valid point.
And I would like to move along also because we have 5 more items on the agenda.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. I second Jason's request to get on with it.
Yes, let's move on.
All
I
in
will get an email to our next meeting is April 21st. And I will get an email to Sean Lewis to invite him. So I basically put the survey grant
Just,
application.
Melinda, just a side note on that, make sure to CC me on that email as staff liaison, please.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Thank
you. The next item was the survey grant application. I just wonder whether it has been completed and submitted.
It has been completed, it has been submitted. We got signatures from the Community Development Director, Brad Power, and Sean Lewis as well. And so all that was finalized actually earlier this week. So it has been officially submitted and is now under review.
with gratitude. Thank you, Eric.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for helping put all the work in it and stuff. I had a couple members review some items I wasn't sure of, and I got some great feedback. So yeah, it's moving forward.
Great.
The thumbs up thing. Yay.
Hey, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the Scarrett House. And I know we had, I'd certainly reviewed everything that Lauren had put together. And other than pictures, I thought it was ready to go.
Yeah, does anyone else have any other major or minor comments on it?
No, I thought it all looked good, and that, you know, kind of definitely captured the, you know, how the building appears and all that. You did a very nice job, Lauren. And the only thing I would say is, I think you should give yourself some credit in the prepared by line. I would recommend that you can have your name and then in parentheses say on behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission, because I think that it should be that document should have your work on it.
I agree.
Good
Yes.
suggestion. Thank you.
No, thank you. Lauren.
And I know, or I think Melinda or Jason mentioned that last meeting, there was a discussion about the photos for it. And I can go out and just take some photos and
I was wondering if that was something I was supposed to do. You wrote me and I totally spaced. what
oh,
I-
no, that's okay. I don't know if I asked you for that specifically.
I don't know.
But the other thing to bring up that actually Eric brought up is that we don't actually, the form that I used for that has not been approved by council. So I'm not sure that this can really move forward at this point. I mean, I think it's ready to go once that is approved and once we get all of that language solidified. But I think at this point, unfortunately, we can't actually list it as a local landmark.
And all
Yeah,
this can't happen till May?
or perhaps later, because the Title 6, all the HPC revisions to the code are going to be wrapped into the Title 16 rewrite. So,
I think what it has said up to now, and maybe even before, was that the application would be made on a form provided by the commission. So do we actually need council's approval of that form?
I believe so. I believe that. Let me try and jog my memory here real quick. So I know that the idea behind the landmark application, as we were moving forward with that, we decided that we wanted to have some landmark protections in place in the code. So people who wanted to apply for landmark status would have a complete idea and understanding of what they were getting into when they submitted a landmark application, what protections the property would receive and what they were going to be expected to do, say, if they wanted to remodel or demolish or things like that. So we wanted to get that landmark protection language in place before we started accepting landmark applications. And so the Scarrett House would have been the first kind of test landmark right out of the gates once that language gets approved.
But we already did
So-
that with the other two a couple of years ago, right? We already did a trial run.
We did it with the Key Bank and with the Brown House.
That was
Yeah.
just for kind of staff review to try and determine how long it would take staff to review the applications and if basically the contents of what we were asking for in the application submittal was appropriate.
Oh. Didn't realize that. Okay. Cool. Well, then we'll make those number 2 and number 3.
That's exactly what I was thinking, CJ.
All right, so what do we do? Sit on it, huh? At
Yeah,
our
that'll be for
presentation,
the council
kind-
study session. That'll be the
that'd be
first
kind of cool
next
to
step.
make it like a 3 or 4 PowerPoint slide presentation on this is what we have or something. I don't know. This is what it could look like if we move forward with it. If you guys accept this, we could save our first house in Inglewood. I don't want to be dramatic,
I
but you
thought
know,
we showed it to them the last time we presented to study session, but maybe
not
not.
scare it. I don't think. No, I don't.
Well, not scared,
like-
no.
Right. So what do you think, Lauren? What should we do? Just sit on, we kind of just sit on it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all we can do. That's my understanding of it, at least, is that's all we can do at this point.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much right. I mean, we had been thinking about going forward with it, but then there was the basically realization that there weren't any teeth into having someone grant landmark status. And so that's the point where we decided we need to establish those. Unless the attorney review. And
Okie dokie.
But-
So I will ask straight out. Lauren, that was a lot of work that you did on Scarrett. I know I had pulled some stuff together, and obviously for the tour of the home, the Brown home up on University in Dartmouth. Should we just start stockpiling these? What do you think, Lauren?
I mean, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, that way we have them, and then when all the language is approved, and the forms are approved, we can go back to the property owners and say, look, we completed this however long ago. We would now like to formally list your building. Do you agree? And move forward
things
from
could
there.
change. You're right. Okay.
I mean, and I think, what's to stop us from preparing forms for other buildings that, maybe are already listed in the National Register, or maybe ones that we already have a lot of history on and an eye for, and that are significant in the community. I mean, we can continue with this process and just have those nomination forms ready, making sure, of course, that we're talking to the current owners and, letting them know that this is happening. But there's nothing to say we can't continue to do that.
Well, I know when it came to the
Absolutely.
Brown House, they just weren't applying staff to this. They were fine to, here's all our information. Just kind of like what you did, where the chiropractor didn't give you information or didn't do it, you did it for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to be honest, right now, I don't have the time.
Well, I mean, once we have the landmark application established, then all that stuff is going to be coming to me or to the community development office to review the initial application. And that next step. So once we have, like, say, the Key Bank one and the Scarrett House, once the landmark stuff gets approved and there's landmark language protected that's agreed upon and passed by council, then we can basically, I don't see any reason why you couldn't hit the ground running and have 2 or 3 historical landmark application reviews the following month or two to have, take a look at Scarrett, take a look at Key Bank, go through the process, go to city council and see what that process is going to look like when you get these first couple items on it. So
Well,
basically like test runs once we get to that point. I mean, you're ready to go. It's just kind of, it's waiting for the language to get ironed out.
Although a point of information anyway, Key Bank and the Brown House and several other buildings are already designated as state historic landmarks. And there we have a couple of national historic landmarks also. And so those are assumed to be Inglewood landmarks without us actually doing anything.
Interestingly enough, the city has more power. Isn't that right, Jason? In determining these things than the state and the national. I don't know. Anyway, I'll be quiet.
Nope. So that goes to what Eric is talking about. Like as far as property protections, the national and state registers do not incur any property protections or guidelines on, how they have to maintain their properties or anything. That only comes from local ordinance. So that's kind of where what Eric was talking to.
The teeth. I got a teeth guy.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So we would still have to inform them that, yes, you're now a city landmark too. And so you're under, we have our teeth in you.
Well, hopefully
Yes,
not
and
that
hopefully you'll
way.
have the owner of the property sign off on the landmark application form. I don't know why they wouldn't, considering they're already historic in nature at a state level. So, but yeah, that would just provide them extra protection coming from Inglewood.
So if anybody wants to take all the information on the Brown House or the Key Bank and jump through the hoops that Lauren did, like I said, forgive me.
I think I saved everything that we did on the Brown House, so
And it
it'll
might
easy
be,
enough to recreate.
I'm just kind of brainstorming here, but it might be a good idea too. If you keep your ears to the pavement and know of somebody who's very, very interested in getting their house on the national or on getting landmark status through Inglewood, and have them, I don't know, kind of keep them in the loop So they're kind of like ready to go, right? When you get the language approved and it passes the appeal period, then they can go ahead and submit that application. And then again, we can start moving right away. So, and then we'll have something that is outside of the state historic landmark, and it would be kind of a unique first going through this process.
Hmm.
So just a thought.
I think there'd be a lot of attention right now in the community, because I think a lot of people are feeling very affected by the development that's occurring with the amount of demolition of the properties around them. So I know on my block, there are a number of people that have homes that are older than 50 years old that would love to see as simply making a point to the development occurring might be interested in such status. So I'll reach out to Melinda. I'm sure there's people in your, you're not too far from me. Just a couple of blocks, but I'm sure on your block, there are similar that may be interested.
Eric, I have a question about that. And this is more from the position of like a community member attending the meeting now and not so much as a commissioner. So I live in a house that was built in 1927. It's one of those little cottages. And so as a community member, what would be my incentive for wanting to sign up for that? And what would I have to do to qualify to sign up for that?
So that's what we were getting into. That's when you would go through the landmark application and then you would submit your property for basically then to my office to review, and then HPC you would review and then make a recommendation to council. And then once that is done, if it's approved as a landmark, then you are granted certain landmark protections, which going around and back to the beginning is the language that we're kind of working with the attorney to kind of hammer out. And also, and Lauren or Jason, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think there are some potential tax credits that are available for those properties that do have some sort of landmark status.
That's what I was getting at. That's why I said I'm a community member. I'm asking from the standpoint of like a attendee at this moment. So if there, would there be other things too? I know that we had already discussed that we would be allowed to, that these properties designated as such would be allowed to be modified. It's not that they wouldn't be allowed to be renovated, because like the house I live in is like for hobbits. So like there should be some allowance, obviously. So would permits for things like that be, maybe even comped, or would there be like other kinds of benefits that could be added to help historic homes modernize while maintaining their, what makes them historically significant? And forgive me for not being able, I'm not as good at this part as you guys.
I think that might have a potential, but usually my experience with that has been people have been, and this is not Colorado relevant, but there were some sort of grant programs in other locations that if people wanted to take and have one, they achieve landmark status, two, they could apply for a grant to help rehabilitate the house if it's in a manner of disrepair. So there are options. I don't know how many of those options would be done through the city of Englewood, but for the property owner having that landmark status could open several doors in that respect.
But
Okay,
I
very
don't
cool.
think, oh, sorry.
Sorry, just last point on that. If we did, when we do launch this out, if we could compile what those kind of incentives would be, like in a one pager, that would be like, I think, valuable to incentivize people to participate.
So just kind of a note that for tax credits, those would not be applicable to these. You have to be a certified local government in order for locally landmarked things. And if we get the language we want for design review and demolition review, we'll basically meet all those standards. So it's something we could look forward to, but unless you're certified by the National Park Service as a certified local government, then you don't qualify for that. National and state register properties, can apply for tax credits, and the only residents is only for the state register. only state preservation tax credits can go for residences. So I think we don't have incentives in place at the moment. It's mostly honorary, but I know it has been kind of stuff of talking about, yeah, are there grants? Are there other tax relief locally? Are there variances on permits, kind of stuff like that we can look forward to, but there's nothing like that currently.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I had forgotten the CLG portion of that, Jason.
Thank you, Jason and Eric both.
And I'll throw
Jason,
out too, the idea that we got tax credits here in Arapahoe Acres, or I have up to $10,000 over 3 years. Then it was cut off and then it came back again. But the gist is, it doesn't help me modernize my house, right? So it helped me with the windows. It helped me recreate the fences and the gates. It helped me repair some masonry. But if I wanted to go like where I went in and redid my bathroom, no money was going to come to that. Even if I returned it to what I thought it looked like back then, it's not original stuff. It's not saved right. Aren't I right, Jason, on this? It wasn't rehabilitated as was, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's based on the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, and rehabilitation is the main one. And that does allow for, kind of adaptive reuse and changing buildings. But yeah, what CJ is kind of talking to is things have to meet what's called qualified expenditures. So yeah, something like putting in a new tub is not usually something that meets those kind of standards. But yeah, again, kind of preserving that historic fabric and stuff certainly qualifies. So, and that's all stuff. Those qualified expenditures are more for tax folks to kind of hash out than preservation folks. But yeah, but exactly, CJ.
Thank you.
Real quick point of order here. I need to step away just for a couple minutes, if that's okay. Cool. I'll be back in just a minute.
Okay, let's, take a break.
Jason, I had a quick question for you.
Let the cat in.
Is there any specific, in regards to CLGs and being able to be eligible for a CLG, is there any specific language that would need to be included in the code regarding the Title 16 stuff that would be a requirement to basically achieve a CLG status at some point in the future?
Yeah, not like very like specific direct language. It's more about what that language allows you to do. And again, our revisions are basically taken from the CLG template language. But yeah, the basics, I'm probably going to miss some, but the basics are they can locally landmark things, that you review permits to design alterations or demolition of historic properties. And then it's really just kind of stuff like, oh, you have to maintain a program of survey, which, that you can get funds for. And then it's just basically like annual reporting to the CLG coordinator. So as long as the language and the ordinance lets you do those things, then yeah, it's not really a matter of very specific. You have to say it like this thing.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So that's why applying for the grant to do the survey was a necessary step for us. And okay, and we've already kind of discussed what we're going to present to City Council, and we'll discuss it more next meeting. So far, I have, our reasoning behind our changes, and also requesting approval of the landmark application. And was there anything else that we needed to say to City Council? Anyone? Yeah. All right.
Well, I think we can kind of go through that at the next meeting too, and just kind of hash out Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe
So,
brainstorm in the meantime.
Yeah. So now we wanted to share what our takeaways were from the Colorado Preservation Conference. We never got that far last meeting, and what I'm not sure who all made it there. I saw Lauren in one of the presentations about Deerfield, which was very interesting.
Yes, it was. That was a great one. Most of the sessions, all the sessions I attended were good.
Yeah. At and yeah, did you? Well, and I know I sent something to Helene and CJ about the I went to the one on streetcars, and CDOT has a GIS map that has pretty much every streetcar that's line that's ever existed, and it includes the Sherilyn horse car, and another one that I never even knew Inglewood had, which was the Loretto Heights Railway, another horse car. It only went through a part of what is now Inglewood, and had a spur that went up to Loretto Heights College. Basically, it was for their students, and it was owned by the Archdiocese. And it didn't operate very long, but I thought it was very interesting.
You know
And,
what was really cool about that info, Melinda? I talked to the gal that's working with the company that's redoing Loretto Heights right now. And they're setting stuff up for their housing and stuff. And I said, did you know about this trolley service to there? And she's like, no, whatever you got, send it to me. And I haven't done anything with it yet, but I thought that was interesting that because they had to go through a lot of hoops to get their stuff done, and to not know about the trolley was kind of cool.
yeah. So, and the cool thing I think is that since CDOT is a public agency, anything that they developed is free for everybody to use.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring this up during staff's choice, but there's a link to the CDOT on the CDOT Cultural Web Resources website. There's a link to the story map, the GIS story map that was created, as well as the full report that was done that's got more in-depth history on trolley lines across the state and Inglewood specifically in there. So I encourage everyone to look at it because it's a fantastic document with a lot of information. And the story map and GIS viewer is really fun and really, really fantastic to just kind of look at and play around with, but also just to get a lot of information from.
Yeah.
I guess since you're kind of asking, roundabout for who's people's takeaway, I guess one that I thought was really interesting was somebody, Joe Minikazi from Urban 3 Planning. He was one of the keynote speakers, as well as he had a session on redlining, and their outfit does a lot of really interesting data crunching and doing it in really interesting visual ways. I think it's something that, well, everybody here would enjoy, but city kind of planning folks like Eric and Madeline would enjoy. But it was a really kind of powerful way showing. It wasn't necessarily preservation based in and of itself, but a powerful way of showing how these historic buildings and neighborhoods contribute to city and state tax funds a lot more than larger things. So it would be like, say that I can't remember the name, but say that little cigar store on Broadway probably brings in a higher tax rate than per square foot than like the Walmart which I thought that was really interesting. And then he used that data to kind of tie with how you can kind of see the effects of redlining with the economics of property taxes and all kinds of stuff. And so he was not like a preservationist in and of himself, but his data goes a lot to that. And it was just kind of a really interesting perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think if there's, you know, if there's individuals that might not see some of the benefits of preservation the way we do, there's some really good information in his presentations that we could give to individuals to just show like preservation has economic benefits. It's more than just, you know, preserving the character and maintaining things as they are. It has deeper roots and deeper strengths.
The one
yeah,
thing
one
I liked
of the
about the-
things I thought was really telling it was just, you know, like count the property tax per acre and the retail tax per acre together. Those are the productivity of that area, and see where your really productive areas are. And they're like, oh, the little shops in the downtown area and everything. They're not Walmart, you know, they're not, plus the Walmart's only, you know, those buildings have a shelf life of 20 years versus the ones that have been around for 100 years.
One of the things that I liked from the conference was the actual saving places designations, is that the term, that were selected for this 2021.
Oh, do you mean the endangered places?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was looking at them going, okay, where were they? And I can't remember. And I'm going on the internet and I'm trying to find them and I'm not finding like a list.
Well, one,
go ahead.
I was gonna say one is from CDOT and it's our historic bridges that are across the state. Just because, you know, for a number of reasons, we can't save and protect all of them. So we wanted this designation to try and gain more public support and more public awareness of the importance of historic bridges and the special and really interesting and significant ones we have around the state, and just working in the hopes that we can work with local communities to recognize what bridges are in their communities and the significance that those might have. So,
Cool.
and the other, well, CJ, if you found the site, you can.
No, I'm finding there's a railroad thing. I'm not finding a list. What I'm seeing is an interview is what the problem is. So I'm not as what do you call that? But
I
there
know
was
one is the Lafayette Head homestead, I think, or house down in the San Luis Valley. And he was the first territorial governor, I think, of Colorado. Maybe not first, but one of the early ones. And his homestead is still there. It's like, there's just remnants of it left, but it's an adobe homestead. And then the other was the balcony house in Winter Park at the ski area there. So a pretty wide range of sites.
Was the tower one or the Hugo Railroad one, was that this year?
No, the Hugo Roundhouse was a while ago, maybe.
So those were just successes and that's what they were showing. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, are these all Inglewood?
No.
Okay, I was like, I
State
didn't
of
think so.
Colorado. This was a Colorado State Conference.
Okay, got it.
But it's really cool as far as like Lyman's historic museum is more intense than you would have ever thought a small town like that would be. Anyway, but different things. Cool. Well, good.
But, you know, I'll say on this topic, the Endangered Places program, I mean, if there's buildings or sites in Inglewood that we feel are, you know, threatened in some way or at risk of being demolished, that's an avenue to go to sort of gain recognition for them. You know, we couldn't list it for another year, but it's something we could start thinking about.
Can we think also about like I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time thinking about how to phrase this, but there's really cool ways of engaging people who might not otherwise be interested in history or endangered spaces. And one thing that is not as hard to do, but it's kind of on trend right now, are augmented reality walking tours, where you have like a map, you can go from spot to spot. When you get to a spot, you look at the place through your phone, and historic images can overlay onto what your camera sees. And it can, it's the kind of thing that can become a little bit of a news story, can get a little buzz, raise awareness. It's high tech. It really brings like what we do into the future, I think. And so maybe we could think of a way to implement like a strategy like that to draw attention to some of these landmarks and endangered spaces.
Well, the city of Lakewood has something I think that they're doing with that. And meanwhile, the Historic Preservation Society is working on a historic walking tour. Are they not, Matt?
That's correct. We actually just finished the those right there, and that's the initial. You have both of them.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So there's the, but I think there's actually a larger book too. You should be.
That's this one. That's it's pretty big.
Is that one there? Okay. Cool. Yeah. So.
That's the one that has.
Yeah. This is the walking tour. Yeah, and this is the first kind of iteration. We're kind of planning a second iteration. And honestly, Helene, your idea is fantastic, and the way that
the idea of taking this and mobilizing it.
Yeah.
Into the 22nd century. What century are we in?
21st.
Great question. You can even put like QR codes maybe at the locations, or there's just a way to integrate it with digital, which doesn't change the history of it, but it adds like an appeal to younger people. And I think sometimes too, it makes it more newsworthy in a way.
No, that's great. I mean, so it's taking this print and putting it in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. An artist could actually make it very an artist could make it so that when you show up at a location, you look through your phone, the entire street could look transformed like it was in history. But that would require like a 3D artist. There's ways to do it with less fuss by just having like 2D image overlays. But the other thing I always say, the things I learned about Inglewoodians, they love their mailers, they love their history, and they're very tech savvy. There's a lot of very technically savvy people here in Inglewood. So I wonder if we could find some community members to help us put together something kind of a high tech experiment to showcase history. Like, can we recruit people?
Well, I'm curious, is this an Inglewood Society type of project, Matthew?
The Historic Society? Well,
Yeah.
So we actually have.
That would take this one to the next level, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, and actually, Helene, you're right on track with a lot of the ideas that we actually have a proposal out right now for signage that potentially includes. I mean, it's very conceptual at this point, it's not confirmed, but we're looking at QR codes, so you'd be able to scan the sign, in front of the IOOF building on the 3400 block of Broadway, and it would bring up information. But taking it a step further to augmented reality, AR, I think that's a really cool idea.
That technology is right there too. That's not far beyond us. I mean, if you gave me 1,000 hours, I could figure it out myself. But I know there's, like I said, some very technically savvy people in the community, and I wonder if we could recruit some of them to help, to volunteer their savviness.
Yeah, interesting idea. Yeah, very interesting.
I throw this out. Does every commissioner have this, or have you seen these yet?
I've not seen them, and would love to get a copy of one.
I've got 2 of them at my house. If you want me to put them, if you don't mind coming to my house, I can put them on the front porch.
Okay.
Let me do this, Eric. Is it possible? This is really important stuff for the commission. Is it possible to talk with Chris about getting those mailed out to each commission member?
Oh, but
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. I mean, they're available at the Civic Center if you're in the neighborhood, but also if you'd like just a copy mailed to you, I can take care of that on my end.
I think everybody, I mean, right now it's hard for folks to get around, especially go to the city center. I don't actually have put in that building in a year.
but Eric, it doesn't need to be mailed. Doesn't need to be mailed to Matt, so.
No, it doesn't have to be mailed to me, but
Save money.
it'd be good. I don't know if Madeline's seen it. It'd be kind of nice for her to have one. Helene, Melinda, you got one with your renewal? You
You're
muted.
on
Where
mute.
they all are around the
Yeah, I'm not sure which one it was I got, but I did get something with the renewal. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm
All
sorry,
right,
Matt.
so let me grab a quick list of names of who needs these, and I can get these sent out probably by the end of the week or next week early. So,
Lauren?
Matt, you said you had them,
Yeah, I've got. Yeah,
and CJ.
Yeah.
CJ has them. Lauren.
So Lauren, Melinda.
No, Melinda. I think Melinda. Did you get two of them, or did you get only one?
I only got one.
Okay, so we'll just send you them again.
Yeah.
Jason and Lauren, right? And Helene.
And Helene. And Madeline, do you have one?
Yes, there's a big stack in the communications
Oh,
office.
sorry.
Awesome.
Can't hear you very well. Sorry. What?
Oh, I said there's a big stack in the communications office. They are awesome. And we were actually talking about how to disperse them around the city. So good job.
Cool.
Good.
I actually
saw
have them in
one
my
in
car.
a restaurant, so. Is that it?
Right.
All right.
Well, say what? Yeah, we're coming up at almost what other and I actually attended the start to finish applying for an SHF grant, and it made my brain hurt, and I was glad we've got Jason here to explain it to us.
His brain already hurt a few times to learn all that stuff, I'll bet.
Yeah. And also on the Main Street programs, that was, and I went to the one on the Elitch's Theater just because we used to have season tickets and went there every summer.
Neat to know.
And so, oh, and I think it was from that, I made a note of a resource that I haven't had much chance to look at, but it might be useful for some or any of us. It's a website, coloradohistoricnewspapers.org.
Oh.
And
That website is great. There's so much on there and it's
No, I
searchable.
can't read the newspapers we get right now.
Well, the only historic newspapers I was able to really track down were the ones that I found in my house when I was doing some remodeling.
ah,
And your neighbor too, didn't you get some from when your neighbor's demolition, what happened?
Yeah. I dug around in the pile that was left of the house after they tore it down. But I learned that the city of Denver tried to annex Inglewood in 1927. And that was a big topic of discussion at that point. So it was trying to be on the front page. I'm sorry, what did you say, CJ?
I said should be.
Yeah.
Are we done?
I think we are done. We move to adjourn.
Go move.
Second that, even though it's not necessary.
Yeah. All in favor can say bye. And I'm at 8:28.
8:28. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Bye.